The galaxy had always believed itself to be a place where the strong ruled without question. Empires had risen and fallen, yet the stars seemed to favor those with ancient technology, vast fleets, and endless resources. In this universe, humanity was a whisper, a new and uncertain presence, barely noticed by the beings who had conquered worlds for thousands of years. They were small, fragile, and unpredictable. That was exactly what made them dangerous. On a distant human colony orbiting a blue-green planet called Arden, Commander Elias Vance stood on the bridge of the starship Resolute. His eyes scanned the holographic displays showing the movement of ships in orbit. Reports had come in that a convoy of unknown alien warships was approaching. The colony's sensors had identified their origin, but their intent remained unclear. The aliens were part of the Clithian Empire, a species known for their ruthlessness and precision in battle. "Sir," Lieutenant Mara Kale reported, her voice steady but tinged with tension. "They're accelerating. They're expecting no resistance. They believe this will be easy." "Easy?" he repeated quietly. He turned toward the viewport, gazing at the approaching lights that marked the alien fleet. There were more than 20 ships, large and armed with weapons that could vaporize human colonies in minutes. Yet, Elias saw something that the Clithians did not: opportunity. "They think we are weak," he said. "They think we will crumble. They don't know humanity. They don't know what we do when we are cornered." "Lieutenant Kale, I want all defense systems online," Elias commanded. "Position our smaller ships in a way that they appear scattered. Make it look like we are disorganized. Let them think this will be an easy fight. And prepare the planetary shields to cover civilian zones only. We don't have enough power for full engagement, but we will make what we have count." She had been with Elias for years, witnessing his unusual strategies and uncanny ability to see opportunities where others saw despair. Humans had a certain creativity in battle, something that many species could not predict. They improvised. They adapted. They refused to surrender, even when every calculation predicted failure. As the Clithian fleet closed in, the humans took positions. The smaller human ships darted through asteroid belts, weaving in and out of natural cover, while the Resolute held position near the planet's largest city. Sensors picked up the alien ships, scanning beams, probing for weak points. They believed their weapons superior, their numbers overwhelming. Then, with sudden precision, Elias gave the order. Human ships, previously scattered and seemingly disorganized, began a coordinated maneuver that no Clithian commander could have predicted. They moved in patterns that resembled a predator circling its prey, using the shadows of asteroids and debris fields as shields. The Clithians opened fire first, confident in their superiority. Energy beams streaked through space, illuminating the void. Human shields flared, absorbing the impact, but the humans did not falter. Instead, they responded with small, rapid attacks, targeting engines, sensor arrays, and weapon systems. Every human ship had only a fraction of the firepower of a Clithian vessel, but they had one advantage: unpredictability. Mara Kale piloted one of the smaller fighters, darting between enemy ships like a shadow. She released tiny drones that swarmed over the alien hulls, disrupting their systems. Explosions flared along the Clithian ships, and confusion spread through their fleet. They had never faced an enemy who fought with such cleverness, such relentless energy. On the bridge of the Resolute, Elias watched the unfolding chaos. "Keep the pressure," he ordered. "Force them to make mistakes. Remember, they are not used to opponents who fight with heart as well as skill." Where they expected fear, they found courage. Amid the chaos, civilians watched from their shelters as flashes of light and energy lit the skies. Fear was present, but so was awe. Humans on the ground felt a strange sense of pride as they realized their species was doing something incredible, standing up to an enemy far stronger than themselves and surviving. Finally, after what seemed like an eternity, the Clithian commander called for retreat. Their ships, battered and demoralized, disengaged and disappeared into the darkness of space. The humans had survived. They had won, not because they were stronger, but because they were clever, adaptable, and fearless. The colony erupted in cheers. Engineers rushed to repair damaged systems. Scientists documented every tactic, every innovation, knowing that this battle would be remembered for generations. Elias Vance stood silently on the bridge, a faint smile on his face. "This is only the beginning," he said quietly. Mara Kale, standing beside him, understood immediately. Humanity had shown the galaxy that they could not be underestimated. Other species might laugh at them, dismiss them as primitive, or ignore them entirely. But those who observed closely now knew a terrible truth. Humans were unpredictable, and that unpredictability could not be controlled. Across the galaxy, sensors on distant planets picked up reports of human ingenuity and courage. Rumors began to spread, whispered in command rooms and councils. Some dismissed it as exaggeration, others began to worry. If one human colony could repel a fleet from the Clithian Empire, what could an entire human civilization accomplish? Elias and Mara Kale spent hours reviewing the battle. They analyzed every move, every risk, every tiny advantage that had turned the tide. They knew that the Clithians would return, stronger and more prepared. Humanity could not afford complacency. They had tasted victory, but the universe was vast and dangers were everywhere. Yet, despite the looming threats, there was hope. Humans had something no alien empire possessed: resilience. They could adapt, learn, and evolve. They could use creativity and courage in ways that even the most advanced alien species could not predict. That was their secret, their power. As night fell over the colony, Elias walked along the observation deck, looking at the stars. Each twinkling light represented worlds unknown, civilizations vast and ancient. Yet humanity, young and untested, had earned a place among them, not as weaklings, not as curiosities, but as a force to be respected. Mara Kale joined him, her expression thoughtful. "Do you think they will come back?" she asked. "They will," Elias replied, "but we will be ready. Every battle teaches us something. Every challenge makes us stronger. The galaxy will know humanity not as a species to be conquered, but as a species that fights, survives, and triumphs. One day they will tremble at our name, but that day is far away. For now we prepare, we learn, and we grow." And in the depths of space, alien scouts who had survived the battle reported back to their empires. Their messages were filled with confusion and fear. They had underestimated humans, and that mistake could cost them dearly. Across the galaxy, other species began to whisper the same words. The humans are dangerous. They are clever. They do not yield. The stars were silent witnesses to humanity's rise. In that moment, no one yet understood how far humans could go, how high they could climb, or how deeply they could change the balance of power in the galaxy. But one thing was clear: the era of underestimating humanity was over. The galaxy would never see them the same way again. And on Arden, Commander Elias Vance and Lieutenant Mara Kale prepared for the battles to come, knowing that the war for humanity's place in the stars had only just begun. The victory at Arden had sent ripples across the galaxy, far beyond what humanity could imagine. News of the humans' cunning and courage reached distant empires, and where there had once been curiosity, there was now concern. The Clithian Empire, humiliated by their failure, convened an emergency council. They demanded action, calling upon the other dominant species to form a coalition. On a massive space station orbiting the binary stars of the system Zellara, representatives of the oldest galactic empires gathered. They were beings of unmatched power, each convinced of their own superiority. Yet when reports came of human tactics and unpredictable strategies, a quiet unease filled the room. "They are not ordinary," said Admiral Zyrak of the Thalorians, his voice low and deliberate. "They adapt. They learn. Their courage defies our calculations. If we do not act carefully, this species may become more than a nuisance. Together, we must eliminate them before they become a real threat." On Earth, Elias Vance convened a meeting with the leaders of human colonies across the solar system. The room was filled with scientists, engineers, and military strategists. Holographic maps showed potential threats, trade routes, and alien territories. "We've made our stand at Arden," Elias began, his voice steady. "We have proven that humans can fight against stronger forces. But this war is only beginning. The galaxy will respond, and they will respond with strength. Our goal is not only survival, it is to ensure humanity thrives no matter the odds. Our ships are smaller, faster, and more adaptable than theirs. We will use hit-and-run tactics, stealth operations, and intelligence that they cannot anticipate. Their strength is in numbers, ours is in ingenuity." They were not the weakest link in the galaxy. They were the most dangerous. Not because of raw power, but because they could think differently, act boldly, and refuse to yield. Meanwhile, fleets of alien ships moved toward human space, confident in victory. They did not expect humans to be organized, to fight back so cleverly, or to prepare defenses in ways they could not predict. They believed that humans were still primitive, still limited by their short history among the stars. They were wrong. Elias and Mara Kale led a series of covert operations, sending small teams of human ships to gather intelligence. These operations were bold, dangerous, and critical. Human pilots infiltrated alien territory, mapping fleet movements and studying enemy tactics. Using drones, sensors, and stealth technology, they collected information that would later allow humans to turn disadvantage into opportunity. One such mission brought Mara Kale and her unit to the heart of a Virelian stronghold. They navigated asteroid fields and slipped past patrols, barely detected. Using miniature drones, they recorded every detail of the station's defenses and communication systems. When they returned, the data allowed human engineers to develop countermeasures, weapons, and strategies that the aliens could never have imagined. Back on Earth, humans worked tirelessly to improve their technology. Ships were modified with adaptive shields, AI-assisted targeting systems, and stealth engines that made them nearly invisible in space. Weaponry was enhanced, not for raw destruction, but for precision strikes that could disable enemy fleets without exposing humans to unnecessary risk. As the Coalition's fleet approached human space, humans were ready. The first engagement took place near the outer rim of the Sol system. The alien ships, vast and heavily armed, expected an easy victory. But as they moved into position, human ships darted from asteroid belts, shadowed by debris, and attacked in ways that made no sense by conventional tactics. Human pilots moved with coordination that was near perfect. They struck weak points, sabotaged engines, and disrupted communication arrays. The aliens were caught off guard, their systems overwhelmed not by brute force but by clever, unpredictable attacks. Entire fleets were forced to retreat or face destruction. On the bridge of the Resolute, Elias watched the battle unfold. "Hold the line, but do not engage blindly. Force them to overextend. Make them fight on our terms," he ordered. Mara Kale's squadron performed a daring maneuver, cutting through the alien formation and disabling key ships before vanishing into the darkness. The Coalition commanders grew frustrated. Every move they made seemed to backfire. The humans were like water, flowing around obstacles, adapting instantly. Each time the aliens thought they had cornered their enemy, they found themselves outmaneuvered. As the battle ended, humans celebrated small victories. They had not destroyed the Coalition, but they had shown that humans were not to be underestimated. Every engagement taught them more, made them faster, smarter, and more resilient. At the same time, the cost was visible. Human ships were damaged, colonies were under threat, and every life lost was felt deeply. Yet the determination of humanity never wavered. Leaders like Elias and Mara Kale reminded everyone that the struggle itself made them stronger. It was not fear that drove humans, but courage and unity. In distant systems, other species began to whisper. Humans were no longer curiosities or weaklings. They were clever, relentless, and growing stronger with every encounter. Some species attempted diplomacy, seeking alliances with humans. Others prepared to retreat, fearing the unpredictable force they had witnessed. On Earth, Elias addressed a council of human leaders. The galaxy will not forget Arden or our victories in these skirmishes. We have proven that humans can survive against overwhelming odds, but this is only the beginning. We must continue to innovate, to adapt, and to prepare. The coalition will return, and when they do, they will come stronger. We must be ready to meet them not just with courage, but with intelligence, creativity, and strategy. They were learning to think as one, to anticipate, and to use the galaxy itself as a tool. The alien coalition, meanwhile, grew more desperate. The repeated defeats against smaller, less equipped human fleets began to shake their confidence. The Thalorians debated whether to continue the campaign, fearing that underestimating humans could lead to catastrophic losses. The Clithians, still smarting from Arden, pushed harder, convinced that only overwhelming force could succeed. As the weeks passed, humans executed a series of carefully planned strikes. They disrupted supply lines, ambushed scouting parties, and captured strategic locations. Every action demonstrated the human ability to turn limited resources into decisive victories. The galaxy began to take notice. In one remarkable operation, Mara Kale led a team to infiltrate a coalition supply station orbiting a gas giant. Using small, human-built drones, they disabled key power generators and communications arrays, forcing the aliens to retreat. No human life was lost, yet the impact was enormous. For the first time, the coalition realized that humans were not just survivors, they were innovators, capable of striking anywhere, anytime. Back on Arden, civilians began to tell stories of the humans who had fought in the stars. Children imagined themselves as pilots, engineers, and heroes. Songs and tales of courage spread across colonies, inspiring a new generation. Humans were learning not only to survive, but to lead, to shape the galaxy through intelligence and determination. Elias and Mara Kale knew that the war would continue. The alien coalition would regroup, plan, and strike again. But humanity had proven a simple truth. Strength alone does not win battles. Adaptability, courage, and unity could overcome the greatest odds. From the stars, humans looked out at the galaxy not as timid newcomers, but as a force capable of shaping their own destiny. Each victory, each clever maneuver, and each act of courage strengthened their position. Humans were no longer insignificant. They were a rising power, one that even the oldest empires could not ignore. And somewhere in the shadows, the coalition commanders whispered words they never imagined they would say. Humans are not like other species. They are dangerous. They are unpredictable, and they will not stop. In the council halls of Earth and in the bridge rooms of starships, humans prepared for the battles to come. Scientists refined weapons, engineers strengthened fleets, and leaders trained their people to think, act, and fight as one. Every challenge, every enemy, and every encounter became a lesson. The galaxy had awakened to the presence of humanity, and the humans had awakened to the reality of their own potential. They were young, yes, but they were determined, resourceful, and united. And as Elias Vance looked at the stars, he knew that the galaxy had only seen the beginning of what humanity could do. Humans would face stronger foes, more complex challenges, and unimaginable threats. Yet in every heart, in every mind, and in every fleet, there was a simple, unshakable truth. Humanity would survive, adapt, and rise. And one day the galaxy would learn to respect and fear the name of humanity. The human victories in the outer systems had begun to change the way the galaxy viewed them. Where once humans were dismissed as primitive and unprepared, now their name carried weight, and in some quarters fear. Alien commanders whispered to each other, frustrated and confused. How could a species so young, so inexperienced, continuously outsmart fleets far larger than their own? On the bridge of the Resolute, Elias Vance studied the latest intelligence reports. Entire alien convoys had been rerouted, and some had even turned back entirely after brief encounters with human patrols. Mara Kale stood beside him, her eyes scanning star maps with precision. "They're learning to avoid us," she said quietly. "The Coalition doesn't understand our strategies yet, but they're adapting, which means we need to stay unpredictable. That's how humans win." Capturing it would cripple the Coalition's ability to wage war, but it was heavily guarded, and no species had ever succeeded in breaching it. Mara Kale assembled a squadron of the most skilled pilots, engineers, and tacticians. They studied the shipyards for weeks, learning patrol routes, shield frequencies, and structural weaknesses. The operation would not rely on brute force. Humans did not have the fleets to match the Coalition head-on, but they had intelligence, creativity, and courage. When the day arrived, the human fleet approached in stealth, weaving through asteroid belts and dark nebulae to avoid detection. Each pilot knew their role, and each action was synchronized with careful precision. The drones they carried were small, agile, and capable of infiltrating the shipyard's defenses unnoticed. As they neared the target, Mara Kale gave the command. "Deploy drones. Move in silently. Remember, we don't need to destroy them outright. Disrupt, disable, and leave them questioning every step." They navigated corridors, bypassed sensors, and hacked critical systems. Engines were temporarily disabled, communication arrays jammed, and weapon platforms rendered ineffective. Chaos spread inside the installation before the humans even arrived. From the bridge of the Resolute, Elias watched the operation unfold. The shipyard's alarms blared, but the humans moved with such speed and coordination that the Coalition's response was fragmented and ineffective. Mara Kale's squadron struck key points simultaneously, ensuring that no section of the shipyard could mount a proper defense. By the time the Coalition realized what was happening, human pilots had already achieved their objective. Ships under construction were damaged beyond immediate repair, supply lines disrupted, and key technology captured. The operation ended with minimal human casualties and maximum strategic gain. For the first time, an entire shipyard of the galaxy's most powerful species had been turned into a battlefield that humans controlled. The victory sent shockwaves throughout the galaxy. Alien leaders convened emergency meetings demanding explanations. How had a young species, with fleets so small and resources so limited, managed to strike the heart of their production? How had they done it with such precision, such efficiency, and such daring? Back on human worlds, celebrations erupted, but the leaders remained cautious. Elias addressed the human council, his expression serious. "This victory shows our potential, but it also paints a target on our backs. Every empire now knows that humans are dangerous. They will prepare for us and they will strike back. We must not grow complacent. Our strength lies not in numbers, but in our ability to adapt, innovate, and act together. That is what will carry us through the war. The Coalition will never predict our next move, but they will remember every one of our victories." Human fleets were no longer mere defensive forces. They were mobile, intelligent, and capable of striking anywhere at a moment's notice. The Coalition, despite its size and resources, began to falter in smaller engagements. Alien commanders were forced to spread their forces thin, fearing ambushes or sabotage. Human pilots exploited these gaps, hitting supply lines, outposts, and patrols with remarkable efficiency. Each success not only crippled the enemy, but also strengthened human morale and reputation. One notable engagement took place near the planet Thressa, where a Coalition fleet sought to blockade a human trade route. Mara Kale led a squadron of human ships through an asteroid field, using the terrain to mask their approach. They struck at weak points in the enemy formation, disabling engines and weapons before vanishing into the shadows. By the time the Coalition regrouped, the trade route was secure, and human forces had disappeared without leaving a trace. News of the operation spread across human colonies, inspiring pride and confidence. Civilians felt the courage of their pilots, and young recruits trained harder, knowing they were part of a species capable of extraordinary feats. Across the galaxy, whispers of humanity's growing power circulated among the stars. The humans were clever, adaptable, and relentless. They fought not just to survive, but to thrive. The coalition, frustrated and humiliated, began to realize that conventional tactics were ineffective against humans. Their greatest strengths, numbers, technology, and experience, were countered by human creativity, determination, and unity. Alien leaders debated long into the night, trying to understand how a species so young could repeatedly outmaneuver them. Meanwhile, human leaders focused on long-term strategy. They did not merely react to the coalition's moves, they anticipated them. Using intelligence gathered from previous missions, they predicted enemy formations, prepared countermeasures, and exploited weaknesses before the coalition could even realize they existed. Humanity was learning faster than the galaxy expected, evolving in the midst of war. At the same time, the human public grew more invested in the war effort. Stories of daring pilots, ingenious engineers, and courageous civilians spread across colonies. Children dreamed of joining the fleets, inspired by the bravery of those who fought in the stars. Humanity's victories were not just military, they were cultural, forging a sense of unity and purpose that no alien species could replicate. Elias Vance reflected on the human spirit that had brought them this far. "We are young," he said to Mara Kale one evening as they watched the stars from the Resolute. "But we are not weak. The galaxy underestimates us because they cannot imagine what we can do when we work together. They cannot calculate courage, ingenuity, or the human will to survive. That is our greatest weapon." Outposts fell, supply chains collapsed, and alien morale declined. Each engagement further demonstrated humanity's ability to adapt, innovate, and overcome challenges that would have destroyed less resourceful species. By the end of the campaign, humans were no longer seen as mere survivors. They were a force to be reckoned with. Alien commanders began to fear the unexpected, knowing that humans could strike anywhere at any time, and that even the most secure positions were vulnerable. In the aftermath of these victories, Elias addressed the Human Council once again. "We have shown the galaxy that humans are not to be underestimated, but the war is far from over. We must continue to evolve, to innovate, and to fight with intelligence, courage, and unity. That is what makes humanity different, and that is what will carry us to the future." She knew that human potential was limitless, but only if every individual learned to think, act, and fight as part of a greater whole. The coalition may be vast, but humans were faster, smarter, and more adaptable. Across human space, civilians and soldiers alike prepared for the battles to come. Technology improved, fleets grew, and human strategy became almost legendary. Even the youngest colonies began to understand that their survival depended not only on courage, but on innovation, adaptability, and unity. The galaxy had begun to take notice. Aliens no longer whispered of humanity as weaklings or curiosities. They spoke of them with caution, fear, and respect. The humans had proven that even a young, inexperienced species could challenge empires, disrupt fleets, and shape the course of war. And in the quiet moments between battles, Elias Vance and Mara Kale knew the truth. Humanity was rising, not through luck or brute force, but through ingenuity, courage, and an unyielding spirit. Every victory was a lesson, every challenge an opportunity, and every engagement a step toward proving that humans were not to be underestimated. The stars stretched out before them, vast and full of danger. Yet humanity faced them with determination, intelligence, and courage. They had already changed the galaxy's perception, and they would continue to do so. The coalition may have thought they could control the war, but humans were not predictable. They were relentless, resourceful, and united. And as Elias looked at the glowing stars, he realized that humanity's rise had only just begun. The galaxy would tremble at their name one day, not because of fear alone, but because humanity had proven that they could face any challenge and emerge victorious. The galaxy had begun to understand that humans were no longer a species to be ignored. After repeated victories in the outer systems and the daring strike on the Draxan shipyards, human fleets had become more than just defenders. They were a threat that could strike anywhere. Alien empires, once confident in their power, now faced the terrifying realization that their old strategies were ineffective against a species that refused to follow predictable patterns. On the bridge of the Resolute, Elias Vance studied the latest intelligence reports with a calm intensity. Mara Kale stood beside him, reviewing the movements of the Coalition fleets. "They're gathering in force," Mara observed. "They've learned to anticipate our tactics, but that also means they're moving slower. Overconfidence still makes them predictable. Then we give them a reason to rethink that overconfidence. We don't just fight, we reshape the battlefield to our advantage. Every maneuver, every engagement must reinforce that humanity cannot be defeated through fear or force alone. They must understand strategy, adaptability, and courage." Intelligence had identified a cluster of alien supply bases, hidden in the asteroid fields of the Xandor system. These bases were critical for maintaining fleet operations across the outer rim. Destroying or capturing them would cripple the Coalition's ability to reinforce or resupply their fleets. It was dangerous, but human leaders knew that bold action was their greatest weapon. Mara Kale assembled a squadron of elite pilots, engineers, and tacticians. Each had proven themselves in previous battles, but this mission required a combination of stealth, speed, and ingenuity unlike anything they had attempted before. Ships were equipped with adaptive shields and stealth engines, while drones carried advanced hacking software capable of disabling alien systems from within. As the human fleet approached the Xandor system, the pilots moved with precision. Asteroid fields provided natural cover, while small human vessels slipped silently past patrols. Mara Kale guided her squadron through narrow gaps in the rocks, using gravitational pulls and natural debris to mask their approach. The alien supply bases were heavily guarded, but humans had learned to exploit weaknesses that no conventional military might anticipate. The first strike was subtle but devastating. Drones infiltrated the bases, disabling communications and sabotaging energy conduits. Human ships, moving in tight formation, attacked critical points, destroying storage facilities and forcing Coalition forces into disarray. Alien commanders struggled to respond, unable to comprehend how such a small force could inflict so much damage. From the Resolute, Elias Vance coordinated the entire operation. Every action had been calculated to maximize impact while minimizing risk. Human ships struck swiftly, then vanished into the shadows, leaving the alien fleets bewildered and disorganized. The supply bases were neutralized, and the humans withdrew before the enemy could mount an effective counterattack. The victory at Xandor became legendary. Not only had the humans disrupted the Coalition's operations, but they had also proven that even heavily guarded positions were vulnerable. Across human colonies, celebrations erupted, but leaders remained focused on the next step. Elias reminded them that the galaxy would not wait for humans to consolidate power. The Coalition would regroup, plan, and strike again. In the weeks that followed, humans continued to exploit the Coalition's mistakes. Pilots like Mara Kale led daring raids on fleets that were overextended, supply lines that were poorly defended, and outposts that were considered secure. Every engagement demonstrated the adaptability, intelligence, and courage that defined humanity. The Coalition, now wary and desperate, began to suffer internal strife. Alien commanders argued over strategy, blaming each other for repeated failures. Some species considered retreat, fearing further losses, while others pressed harder, hoping sheer numbers could overwhelm the humans. But the more they pressed, the more humans adapted, turning overconfidence into vulnerability. One of the most remarkable operations occurred near the planet Hestia, where a coalition fleet sought to blockade a human colony. Mara Kale led a squadron of ships through an uncharted nebula, using dense gas clouds to mask their movements. They struck the fleet from behind, disabling engines, weapons, and shields. By the time the coalition realized what had happened, the blockade was broken, and the colony remained safe. The victory at Hestia spread throughout human space, strengthening morale and inspiring more daring strategies. Civilians and soldiers alike realized that humans were no longer fighting merely for survival. They were actively shaping the outcome of the war. Stories of courage, innovation, and determination spread quickly, reinforcing a culture of unity and resilience. Elias Vance, observing these victories, knew that the key to humanity's success lay not in numbers but in coordination, ingenuity, and spirit. "We are still young," he said, "but we are strong because we are unpredictable. The galaxy has never seen a species like us. They underestimate us at their own peril, and it is why they will continue to tremble at our name." The coalition realized that humanity's strength was not merely in combat but in intelligence, adaptability, and unity. They could strike anywhere, anytime, and in ways that could not be predicted. Back on Earth, councils convened to plan the next stages of the war. Scientists worked tirelessly to develop new technology, engineers reinforced fleets, and military leaders trained pilots to anticipate every possible scenario. Humanity's rise was deliberate and careful, built on lessons learned from every engagement. Even as the coalition struggled, humans continued to innovate. They developed tactics that combined stealth, intelligence, and speed. They used drones to infiltrate enemy systems, attacked weak points with precision, and coordinated strikes across multiple regions simultaneously. Each action demonstrated that humans were not merely fighting, they were evolving in the midst of war. The impact of these victories extended beyond military success. Colonies that had once feared invasion now thrived, inspired by the courage and ingenuity of human fleets. Scientists made discoveries in energy, propulsion, and communication that allowed humans to operate more efficiently and effectively. The culture of innovation, adaptability, and courage became a defining feature of human society. Alien empires, once confident in their dominance, were forced to acknowledge the rise of humanity. Some attempted diplomacy, seeking to negotiate peace or alliances, but humans were careful, knowing that trust without understanding could be fatal. Others prepared for war, yet they did so with caution, aware that the humans they once dismissed were now formidable opponents. As Elias Vance walked across the observation deck of the Resolute, he reflected on humanity's journey. From a young species dismissed as inconsequential to a force capable of reshaping the galaxy, humans had proven their resilience and ingenuity. Every victory, every clever maneuver, and every act of courage had contributed to a growing legend. Mara Kale joined him, her expression serious but proud. "We've shown them who we are," she said, "but this is far from over. The galaxy is vast and the coalition will try again. We must continue to adapt, innovate, and fight together. That is the only way humanity survives and thrives. And we will be ready for whatever comes next. The galaxy may tremble at our name, but it is not fear alone that gives us strength. It is our courage, unity, and ability to think where others cannot." Pilots like Mara Kale continued to lead daring missions, while engineers and scientists developed innovations that ensured humans remained ahead of their enemies. The coalition, fragmented and demoralized, struggled to respond. Every attempt to strike back was met with swift, clever resistance. Human victories were not merely the result of force, they were the result of ingenuity, adaptability, and the unyielding will of a species that refused to be conquered. Across the galaxy, whispers of humanity's power spread. Aliens spoke cautiously, aware that underestimating humans was now a dangerous mistake. The name of humanity became synonymous with unpredictability, courage, and relentless determination. Elias Vance and Mara Kale understood that the war was far from over. Yet in every engagement, every mission, and every victory, humans had proven a simple truth. They were capable of anything when united, resourceful, and courageous. They had transformed from a young species into a legend in the making. The galaxy would never see them the same way again. Where once humans had been dismissed, now they were respected and feared. And humanity, for the first time, realized the full scale of its potential. The stars stretched endlessly before them, filled with challenges and opportunities. Yet humanity faced them with confidence, intelligence, and courage. They had already shown the galaxy what they could do, and the future promised even greater achievements. The Coalition may have once believed they could control the war, but humans were unpredictable, adaptable, and relentless. Every victory strengthened their position, every lesson made them smarter, and every engagement reinforced their unity. The galaxy had learned an important lesson. Humanity would not be defeated. And as Elias Vance gazed out at the stars, he knew the truth. Humans had only just begun to rise. Their journey was far from over, but the path forward was clear. To survive, to adapt, to lead, and to ensure that the galaxy would never again underestimate the courage, ingenuity, and indomitable spirit of humanity. The Coalition had grown weary, fragmented, and fearful. Humanity's rise had shattered centuries of dominance and confidence among the oldest empires in the galaxy. Once mighty fleets were scattered, supply lines disrupted, and entire command centers were neutralized by strategies no one could have predicted. Humans, once underestimated, now commanded the attention of every corner of space. On the bridge of the Resolute, Elias Vance surveyed the galaxy like a general overseeing an unseen battlefield. Mara Kale stood beside him, reviewing fleet positions and intelligence updates. The humans had grown stronger, faster, and smarter with each engagement. But Elias knew that the final stage of this conflict required more than skill and courage. It required humanity to prove itself as a force the galaxy could not ignore. "They're gathering near the core systems," Mara Kale said, her voice steady but tense. "The Coalition is trying to consolidate what remains of their power. They want a final showdown, thinking they can crush us before we grow stronger. Every engagement, every maneuver, will remind them why humans cannot be controlled or defeated. This is our moment to show the galaxy what we are capable of." Drones, AI-assisted targeting systems, and adaptive shields made the human ships nearly untouchable in combat. Every mission had been a lesson, every encounter had been practice, and now, humans were ready to demonstrate the full extent of their capabilities. The first phase of the operation involved disrupting the Coalition's command network. Mara Kale led a squadron deep into enemy territory, using asteroid belts and nebulae to mask their approach. Small drones infiltrated key installations, disabling communications and spreading confusion among the Coalition fleets. Alien commanders scrambled, trying to coordinate responses, but humans had anticipated every move. Elias Vance coordinated attacks across multiple fronts, using intelligence gathered over months of war. Human fleets struck supply bases, intercepted reinforcements, and ambushed isolated units. The Coalition, now spread thin, struggled to mount an effective defense. For every maneuver they attempted, humans had a counter. Every move they made was anticipated and neutralized. At the heart of the conflict, Mara Kale led the charge against the main Coalition fleet near the planet Arcturus. The alien ships were vast, heavily armed, and confident. Yet the humans moved with precision, striking weak points, exploiting gaps, and avoiding direct confrontation where possible. The battle was not won by firepower alone. It was won by strategy, intelligence, and courage. Using innovative tactics, the humans disabled key engines, disrupted weapon systems, and infiltrated command ships with drones. Entire formations of coalition vessels were thrown into disarray, retreating where they had intended to advance. Each success further reinforced humanity's reputation. They were unpredictable, resourceful, and relentless. In the midst of the battle, civilian populations watched from secure zones. They saw flashes of light and energy in the skies, explosions in distant orbit, and the courage of their fleets. Pride filled the hearts of humans across colonies. They were witnessing history, watching their species take control of the galaxy's narrative. By the end of the engagement, the coalition fleet was shattered. Ships fled in disarray, bases were abandoned, and the coalition's leaders realized that humanity could not be defeated through conventional means. Every strategy they had relied upon was countered by human ingenuity. Every assumption about weakness was proven false. Across the galaxy, alien species began to whisper about humans with caution, awe, and fear. The once dismissed species had demonstrated that courage, intelligence, and unity could challenge even the oldest and most powerful civilizations. Humans were no longer insignificant. They were a force that had reshaped the balance of power in the galaxy. Back on Earth, Elias Vance addressed a council of human leaders. "We have shown the galaxy what humans can do," he said. "We have proven that we are capable of facing the greatest challenges and emerging victorious. But this victory comes with responsibility. We must continue to protect our colonies, advance our technology, and ensure that our actions inspire respect and cooperation across the galaxy. Humanity has grown stronger because we adapt, learn, and act together," she said. "We fight not because we are reckless, but because we are capable. Our victories are not just military. They are proof of what humans can accomplish when united and determined." Some sought alliances, realizing that cooperation was wiser than conflict. Others maintained distance, wary of provoking a species that had proven its ability to dominate the battlefield with intelligence rather than brute force. Humans had not just won battles, they had established themselves as a species whose potential could not be ignored. Across human space, colonies flourished. Scientists developed new technologies inspired by the challenges of war, engineers improved ships and defenses, and civilians contributed to rebuilding and strengthening settlements. Humanity's victories had created not just safety, but opportunity. The species was no longer merely surviving, it was thriving. Elias Vance reflected on the journey that had brought humanity to this point. From the humble colonies of Arden to the decisive campaigns against the coalition, humans had grown stronger through courage, ingenuity, and unity. Every pilot, engineer, and civilian had contributed to a legacy that would endure for generations. Mara Kale, standing beside him, added, "We have proven that humans are not to be underestimated. But we must continue to evolve, to innovate, and to act together. The galaxy has learned to respect us, and we must ensure that respect is maintained through wisdom as well as strength." Humans had changed the balance of power, proving that a young, determined species could rise to challenge even the oldest empires. Stories of human courage, intelligence, and strategy spread quickly, becoming legend among both allies and former enemies. The stars themselves seemed to acknowledge humanity's rise. Where once humans had been invisible among countless civilizations, now they were recognized, respected, and feared. The galaxy had learned a simple truth: humanity was capable of achieving the impossible when united, innovative, and determined. On Earth, Elias Vance addressed the people during a ceremonial gathering. "We have fought battles that many said we could not win. We have overcome challenges that seemed insurmountable. Today, humanity stands not as a species to be ignored, but as a force that shapes its own destiny. Let us continue to honor that spirit with courage, intelligence, and unity in all that we do." The young pilots she had trained, the engineers who had worked tirelessly, and the civilians who had supported them all had contributed to a historic achievement. Humanity had not only survived, it had prevailed, reshaping the galaxy in the process. The coalition, now a shadow of its former self, understood that it could never again challenge humanity in the same way. Fleet commanders debated whether to rebuild or retreat entirely, aware that humans were no longer a species to confront lightly. Every plan, every tactic, and every assumption would need to be reconsidered in light of humanity's unprecedented rise. Meanwhile, human colonies celebrated. Children dreamed of becoming pilots, engineers, and explorers. Communities were inspired by stories of bravery, ingenuity, and unity. Humanity's culture, forged in the fires of conflict, had emerged stronger, wiser, and more cohesive. Elias Vance and Mara Kale knew the work was not finished. The galaxy was vast, and challenges would continue to arise. But humanity had proven a crucial truth. The species could survive, adapt, and thrive against the greatest odds. Every battle, every victory, and every lesson had reinforced their resilience, creativity, and unity. As the stars stretched endlessly before them, human fleets moved with purpose, intelligence, and confidence. They had proven that even a young species could dominate the galaxy not by force alone, but by courage, ingenuity, and determination. The name of humanity had become legendary, a symbol of unpredictable strength and unyielding spirit. The coalition's remnants learned to approach humans with caution, while former allies recognized the value of cooperation. Across the galaxy, civilizations began to understand that humanity could no longer be ignored, underestimated, or dismissed. Elias Vance reflected on the journey that had brought humanity to this point. From the first battle at Arden to the decisive campaigns that dismantled the coalition, humanity had grown stronger in skill, spirit, and unity. Every pilot, engineer, and citizen had contributed to this achievement, and every lesson learned had prepared them for the future. Mara Kale added, "We have shown the galaxy what humans are capable of, but we must continue to evolve, to think differently, and to work together. Our victories are not just about power. They are about intelligence, unity, and the courage to face any challenge." They had fought with ingenuity, courage, and unity, and in doing so, had earned a place among the most respected civilizations in the universe. The galaxy had learned a truth that would endure for generations. Humanity was unstoppable when united, inventive, and courageous. They had transformed from a species underestimated and overlooked into a legend. The stars themselves seemed to acknowledge this rise, and the name of humanity became synonymous with determination, intelligence, and bravery. Elias Vance and Mara Kale, looking out from the bridge of the Resolute, knew that this was only the beginning. Humanity would continue to grow, explore, and thrive. The galaxy had witnessed their strength, but humanity's journey was far from over. The universe was vast, full of challenges and opportunities, and humans were ready to face them all. The stars stretched endlessly ahead, but humanity no longer feared the unknown. They had learned to adapt, to fight with intelligence and courage, and to shape their own destiny. The galaxy would remember them, not as weaklings, not as curiosities, but as a species that had proven its power through determination, ingenuity, and an unbreakable spirit. And so, the galaxy trembled at the name of humanity, not out of hate but out of respect. They had fought, survived, and emerged victorious. They had shown that courage, intelligence, and unity could overcome even the greatest empires. Humanity had risen, and the universe would never forget their legacy.